Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Kulveen Trehan from University School of Mass Communication, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, Government of Delhi. Today, we are going to talk on the module of Media Ethics from the paper Media Information Literacy. Students, the objectives of this module are to provide a comprehensive understanding of the various concepts in media ethics. Secondly, to provide insights into the factors responsible for the state of ethics in media organizations in present times. It is also to explore various unethical practices in mass media. Also, to throw light on various cases, instances of ethical violations by the Indian media in particular. Another objective of this module is to aid in deep understanding of the ways and modes to protect the ethical code in mass media. Let us begin with the introduction to mass media ethics. What is media ethics? The New Oxford Dictionary defines media ethics as issues of moral principles and values as applied to the conduct, roles, contents of the mass media, especially journalistic ethics and advertising ethics. It is in relation to the news coverage. It includes issues such as impartiality, objectivity, balance, bias, privacy, and public interest. More generally, it also includes stereotyping, taste and decency, obscenity, freedom of speech, advertising practices such as product placement, and legal issues such as defamation. On an institutional level, media ethics includes debates over media ownership and control, commercialization, accountability, the relationship of media to political system, issues arising from regulation, that is censorship, and deregulation. Now we come to tracing the evolution of media ethics. In order to understand the historical evolution of the concept of media ethics, we see that media ethics is rooted in the tradition of ethical relativism. That is, when ethical decisions in media practice take into account the prevailing societal norms in various regions. While trying to understand the growth and development of media ethics across the globe, we see that it is largely based on the following principles. Number 1, the principle of golden mean. Number 2, the categorical imperatives. Number 3, the concept of utilitarian ethics. Number 4, the principle of egalitarian ethics. Number 5, the Potter box. The golden mean. Let's try and understand the meaning of the concept, the golden mean. Golden mean, the concept itself, was given by the Greek philosopher Aristotle about 2400 years ago. Now, golden mean means that you apply moderation and no extremism in decision making. Journalistic ethics, the codes of balance and fairness, are derivatives of the golden mean. Journalists across the world have to take care that they do not take an extreme position while taking an editorial or reporting decision in their conduct. In the code of conduct for journalistic ethics across the world, the concepts of balance and objectivity drive home the point. Categorical imperatives. The principle of categorical imperatives was given by German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who propagated the universalization of moral principles. In categorical imperatives, he outlines that an ethical principle must be the one which can be applied in any and all circumstances with moral certitude. Kant emphasized on standardized approach to ethics represented by professional codes. Universality and equity are the dominant denominators in categorical imperatives. Utilitarian ethics. Another important grounding principle of media ethics is utilitarian ethics. In the 1800s, John Stuart Mill gave the concept of utilitarian ethics. It means that the ethics should be rooted in the principle of utility, that is, Right decisions are the ones that result in the happiness for the greatest number. This principle of utility shared a major democratic premise where the value of majority is at a premium. Journalists' right to know and people's right to information are the outcomes of Mill's constructs. While tracing the historical trajectory of media ethics as a theoretical construct, another important principle is pragmatic ethics. In 1903, John Dewey expanded the discourse on ethics by arguing for pragmatic ethics. Pragmatism calls for an ethical system based on judging any decision made by the media by its results. He places greater emphasis on the consequence of media practices than on conceptual consistencies. Taking a cue, American Society of Newspaper Editors adopted the first media ethics code in 1923, keeping the principle of pragmatic ethics in mind. Egalitarian ethics. Another important founding principle of media ethics is egalitarian ethics. John Rawls proposed the maxim of egalitarian ethics. Egalitarian ethics means that an ethical decision is taken only if all the people are given an equal hearing and the same fair consideration. It is blind to the social and cultural identity of the subject. A veil of ignorance is vital for egalitarianism. The Potter box. Ralph Potter gave a 4-quadrant model of ethics in order to strengthen the theoretical constructs of media ethics. The first quadrant is represented by situation. Situation means to ascertain all the facts of an issue that are newsworthy. That is, to sift the information for factual details with respect to the issue or the event. Number 2, principles. Grounding the values in moral principles is a must. A journalist must match the value to the moral principle it is closest to. Number 3 is values. Enlist all the positive and negative values or positions on the emerging facts about a particular happening. You must note the compatibility of options before arriving at a decision. Number 4, loyalties. Establish a hierarchy of loyalties based on all the interests and duties. Then sort and prioritize your loyalties as a media person. Need for media ethics. Media ethics is a compulsory requirement for any society. Media ethics is essentially a code of conduct prescribed by the press largely across the world to guard and protect professionals and the profession entirely. Media practitioners require an ethical code to safeguard themselves from committing any offense against the society. It helps to set standards of moral context with respect to what is avertible and unacceptable in gathering, processing, and dissemination of a wide variety of messages through mediated communications. Now we look at the fundamentals of media ethics. We must note that all fundamental guidelines of media ethics are a derivative of largely Clifford Christian's summary of duties. Clifford Christian sums up the duties of media persons into 4 major categories. Number 1, duty to the society. All media persons, news and non-news media persons, must ensure that they are socially responsible. That is, they work in public interest. Number 2, the duty to the profession itself. Media persons must adhere to the professional code of conduct. That is, they must understand what are the normative practices in their profession and then charter their path of ethical decision making. Number 3, duty to the audiences. Clifford Christian argues that media ethics is also a derivative of the duty to audiences. That is, newsmen as well as non-newsmen must respond to the needs, motives, and interests of the audiences at large. Number 4, personal ethics, that is, duty to self. A media man should not be self-serving, yet must respond to personal integrity and ethics. various subsets of media ethics. Let's now look at the various components of media ethics. Media ethics is a composite term that revolves around inventing more consistent responses to the challenges and conflicts in mass communication. In the contemporary milieu, it includes specialized components like journalistic ethics, number 2, advertising ethics, and number 3, the public relations ethics. Arguably, the most important subset of media ethics is journalistic ethics. Popularly known as the fourth estate, the news media, formerly called as the press, embodies the freedom of press enshrined in Article 19A of the Constitution of India. Post-independence, it served the function of information dissemination and education for nation building and to bridge the information gap between the elite and the common man. Certain codes of ethics were formulated to ensure responsible reportage both by the government, independent non-governmental agencies, and of late by the private media companies to create a uniform charter. Journalistic ethics in India. Largely, all discussions begin with journalistic ethics across the world. Even today, contemporary journalistic practices form the nucleus of any discussion on media ethics. Journalistic ethics in India started with the establishment of Press Council of India. The Press Council was created in 1966 to preserve the freedom of press and improve the standards of news reporting and media coverage by the newspapers and news agencies. PCI is an autonomous and statutory body with editors, political appointees, and journalists as its constituent members. It formulated a journalistic code of ethics to uphold moral and ethical norms in the practice of news creation and distribution by the individual journalist and composite news organizations. Salient features of journalistic ethics. Let's now look at the salient features of journalistic ethics. Number 1. Truthfulness is an honest presentation of all the information intended for the public. Pranjoy Guha Thakurta, in his book Media Ethics, writes that truthfulness as a journalistic ethics can be divided into 2 parts. First part is determining the veracity of the information that may be reported. The second part deals with the accuracy and honesty with which sourced information is reported. He further argues that 3 different theories of truth form the fundamental basis of the concept of truthfulness in journalism. Number 1, the correspondence theory, in which truth exists in relation to the extent to which it corresponds with objective reality. Number 2, the coherence theory, where truth of something can be established by the degree to which it is consistent with individual or societal norms and values. Number 3, the consensus theory. Truth is also viewed as something that most people agree upon. Let's now move on to the second salient feature of journalistic ethics, privacy. Everyone, including the public figures, have right to maintain privacy. Privacy allows us to decide the extent to which we want to talk about ourselves in the public space. It protects all men and women against prying and spying. The journalists, however, are often intrusive. They pursue the private lives of famous personalities, often crossing the line. News stories on sexual orientation of celebrities, marital problems of film stars, and politicians are common breaches of privacy in news. Let's now move on to the next salient attribute of journalistic ethics, confidentiality. It is the ability of the journalist to keep secret the names of the people who provided him with the information. Confidentiality is an important tool of news gathering. If the journalists do not commit to keep the names of information giver undercover, people will not be able to tip the reporter fearing action or adversity. But on the other hand, we see a lot of irresponsible journalism taking place under the protection of sources by frequent use of quotes and attributions to inside sources, unnamed sources, and other sources in the government. Use of anonymous sources has become a tool to frame anyone to achieve a certain agenda by the journalists. Now we move on to personal ethics. Acceptance of free gifts, fringe benefits from groups or corporations that fall under your area of news coverage marks a direct conflict of interest. Any such cash or in-kind benefit is unethical, as it not only makes you pliant to the organization but also impinges heavily on journalistic freedom. PCI Code of Ethics 2010 Norms of Journalistic Conduct in India. Number 1. Accuracy and fairness. The press shall not publish inaccurate, distorted, and half-true information. The journalist must ensure that no conjecture is made based on hearsay or unsubstantiated facts in the reportage. It will ensure that while providing news, all sides of the story will be put out to the public. Number 2. Pre-publication verification. The editor needs to verify the claims or statements made in the report filed by the staff. Quotes and attribution should be made to qualify the information provided in the news item. Number 3. Caution against defamatory writings. The newspaper must follow the tenets of the law of defamation and not engage in any libel or slander against an individual or any organization through its news. Any such news that may be true or in public interest does not fall in the category. Number 4. Parameters of the rights of press to comment on the acts and conduct of public officials. Apart from judiciary, the press can write on the acts of public servants after due verification of the facts. The judiciary, however, is protected by legislations like the Contempt of Court and Protection of the Privileges by Article 105 and 194 respectively. Right to privacy. Right to privacy is a deemed right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. It states, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. Hence, press must refrain from intruding into the personal lives of the public until unless there is a larger objective of public good attached to it. Number 6. Caution against identification. The press will abstain from revealing the identity of the accused and victim while covering the crime. Proper care will be taken to keep the names, faces, and recognizable cues like regional and social identity of people in the story by the newspersons. Number 7. Recording interviews and phone conversations. The journalist will seek permission of the interviewee or the participant to record any conversation as a discussant or interviewer. Phone conversations will also not be recorded without the permission of the concerned person. Number 8. Conjecture, comment, and fact. The distinction between conjecture, comment, and fact must be made while publishing a story. Number 9. Newspapers should avoid suggestive guilt. In matters of crime reportage, the press should not use filial associations to suggest linkage with crime. Number 10. Corrections. It is the duty of the newspaper to publish an apology in case of misinformation and a corrigendum in case there is incorrect information set out as news. Right to reply. The aggrieved person must be able to reply, counter, contradict, or explain his conduct with respect to your published item. Number 12. Letter to the editor. A well-balanced approach is required in selecting the final publication of the letters to the editor. Even though the editor enjoys the discretion regarding the selection of letters, diversity of opinion on a given issue needs to be practiced. Number 13. Obscenity and vulgarity to be eschewed. Newspapers must adhere to the definition of obscenity and not publish anything crass or objectionable about a gender or a segment of population. Number 14. Glorification of social evils to be eschewed. The press needs to ensure that besides crime, social evils like dowry, domestic violence, female feticide, untouchability, discrimination, and caste-based inequality must be discouraged by media. Number 15. Glorification of criminals. The newspaper must not present a story that may create a favorable image of the perpetrators of crime like rape, murder, and terrorist activities in the minds of the public. Number 16. Covering communal disputes and clashes. While covering the outbreak of a communal clash, utmost care must be taken to trim down the emotion and keep the account completely factual and neutral. Number 17. Caste, religion and community references. The Constitution of India and other jurisprudence must be respected in designating a specific social or economic segment of society. Number 18. Reporting on natural calamities. Objectivity and comprehensiveness are the key to reporting natural disasters. Cross-verification of facts, minus sensationalism and haste are the key here. 19. Paramount national interest. Media has the responsibility towards nation building and strengthening the democratic state. To do so, the press must adhere to the restrictions on freedom of speech and expression as given in Article 19(2). Number 20. Foreign relations. Press is a principal marker of diplomatic relations between two or more countries. While newspersons must ensure that journalistic writings should not jeopardize the relationship between two nations, it is also the duty of the press to bring to light the anomalies in the code of conduct, especially the misuse of diplomatic immunity. Number 21. Investigative journalism, its norms and parameters. Investigations need to be unhurried, not in disguise, and based on a process of leads, documents, and evidence. Unethical practices in Indian news. Now that we have understood the meaning and the code of conduct of journalistic practices, it becomes very important to now see the instances and various types of ethical violations in journalism. Now that we have understood the code of journalistic practice in India, it becomes imperative to understand the various forms of unethical practices prevalent in contemporary news media. Number 1. Embedded journalism. Embedded journalism means that the media is siding with one side's military in an armed conflict. The United States of America's Department of Defense used embedded journalism by placing the journalists on its side during the Iraq War in 2011. Amu Joseph writes that it involves training of the journalist, assigning them to different sections of the armed forces, and enabling them to travel with the troops and report live from various battlefronts. Let's see an illustrative example of embedded journalism in India. Seema Mustafa, in her column Embedded Journalism, the Indian version outlines how reportage of the Kashmir conflict is a case in point of embedded journalism. She argues that those who follow the government lines in Delhi have the access to the corridors of power. Ministers make themselves available to selected journalists for an interview that is predetermined and given on the condition that they will ask only cleared questions. In her article, she also traced the history of embedded journalism in India, and she finds out that an Indian radio journalist, PRS Money, was embedded amongst Indian troops in the British Army in World War II. He was appointed the information officer with the British government and hence reported from the sites of war. Mr. Money also kept a parallel diary about the actual stories of war crimes and stories of the soldiers, giving us an illustration of how embedded journalism took place in those times. Another popular form of unethical practice in news is fake sting operations by the use of entrapment. The rise of electronic media saw a rapid increase in sting operations by TV news channels to expose various misdemeanors in public offices. Such sting operations often violate the principles of journalism. One of the tools adopted by these sting operations is entrapment. Entrapment means giving inducement to a person to commit an offense which he is otherwise not likely and inclined to commit. Let us now look at an example of fake sting operation through entrapment. The Delhi High Court took suo motu notice of a fake sting operation in which a reporter doctored the voice and video recordings to project a totally fabricated allegation. The television channel Live India aired a program on August 30 showing a Delhi school teacher forcing a student into sex work. It led to violence outside the school and the teacher was assaulted by angry citizens. Later, she was also dismissed from service. It later transpired that the reporter had cooked up this allegation at the behest of a businessman to whom the teacher owed some money. That student, who was used as entrapment, was an aspiring journalist roped in by the reporter. The reporter had repeatedly phoned the teacher, asking to be supplied with the girls, a demand which the teacher had strongly objected to. Trial by the media. Let's now look at another popular form of ethical violation by Indian news media. With 24/7 news broadcast, the extent of coverage given to a story has increased exponentially. Especially while covering crime, the media often crosses the line. Many a times, it leads to partisan and biased coverage of the accused or the victim in relation to an incident of crime or violence. The coverage tends to opine beyond the scope of its investigation, often deciding the case in the TV studios or in newsprint. We often see that media conducts parallel trials criticizing the ongoing investigations by the police or court, sowing doubts in the minds of the public about the credibility and the competence of the official machinery deployed for the case. This phenomena of passing judgment on an investigation which is currently ongoing by the media is referred to as trial by the media. 200th Law Commission Report 2006 states that this prejudgment can have a detrimental effect on dispensement of justice as it may influence the witnesses or at times even the judges. We have often seen examples of trials by the media in broadcast journalism. One of the most popular examples of trials by the media has been the reportage of Arushi and Hemraj double murder case in 2008. This particular case was exhaustively covered by the media, but soon became a trial by the media, passing judgments on who the culprit is or who the murderer is, or even to the extent of character assassination of the dead. Another ethical contravention is offensive content in news. What is offensive and what is not may be subjective. The decisions about the offensive nature of content are determined by socio-cultural predispositions, but certain universal facts remain vis-a-vis media ethics. For example, images of blood-spilling body parts, telecast of death penalty, revealing the names of witnesses, beeping the cuss words, showing the faces of the accused are considered unethical, keeping in mind the tastes and values of larger audiences. In India, we have seen offensive content is put out, especially with regards to coverage of conflicts and terror attacks by television news channels. This coverage is often insensitive, sensational, and offensive. Another ethical violation is the practice of checkbook journalism. It means the practice of paying the subject of the story for the information to be packaged as news. In this practice, money is paid to publish to the individual or organization to buy exclusive coverage or reportage of that particular incident. Checkbook journalism violates the very basic principle of news gathering. Peter Manning wrote in The Guardian that checkbook journalism blurs the line between news and entertainment. He adds, "Who pays the piper calls the tune." Paid news. Paid news is perhaps the most discussed and the most serious form of unethical practice in Indian journalism. According to Press Council of India, paid news is any news or analysis appearing in any media, print and electronic, for a price in cash or kind as consideration. Now a serious question arises. Is paid news the biggest challenge to media ethics in India today? Anant Rangaswamy in the Indian Express defined various types of paid news. Number 1. Paid news in print. A. Content presented in an editorial style with a small disclaimer which says advert, advertisement, promotional feature, or a marketing feature. Number 2. Paid news in print. B. Content presented in an editorial style without any flagging or disclaimer. Number 3. Paid news in radio, where the radio jockey mentions brands, peoples, and so on. Number 4. Paid news in television. A. Where the content is presented in an editorial style with a disclaimer which says sponsored feature or sponsored program and so on. Number 5. Paid news in television. B. Where the content is presented in an editorial style without any disclaimer. The dangers of paid news. Let us now closely look at the perils of paid news as an increasing practice in India. Paid news misleads the people and often results in creation of incorrect public opinion. Especially during elections, paid news can create a favorable perception about a party or a candidate based on false news stories published in various newspapers. Often we see political advertising is masqueraded as news. People are not able to distinguish between advertising and news. Paid news is also used as a tool of propaganda for name-calling or mudslinging on the rivals. Paid news affects the neutrality of the media by not providing a level playing field to different parties, people, and viewpoints. In the state assembly elections of Maharashtra in 2009, Ashok Chavan, the then chief minister, declared his expenditure to be rupees 5,379 and rupees 6,000 on newspaper and cable television advertising respectively. P. Sainath, former rural editor of The Hindu, brought to light that over 100 pages of news, most of them full pages with his pictures prominently displayed, were published during the times of elections in various publications. Significant to note is that since same story eulogizing the achievements of Mr. Chavan appeared in different newspapers under different names, making it a fit case in point for paid news. Now we move on to unethical use of unrelated videos. Television news is all about sound bites, audio and video synchronization to tell a factual story. But there are serious violations in the way video content is presented to the viewers. Many a times, the TV channels show unrelated videos to put out a sensational story either on the lives of a celebrity or a public figure. Of late, pasting video footage irrelevant to the news story has spread to hard news as well, which includes crime, politics, minority relations, and rural reportage. Let us now look at some cases of use of unrelated videos to create false news. In this, we see how television channels use old videos to push their theory of violence against a particular community by the locals. The videos have been taken from the internet and are not related to the story being aired. In the first instance, we see that India Today, a leading channel, carried a report about the attack on Biharis by Manipuri community after violence in Churachandpur. The news story opens with an August 30 attack on a Bihari sugarcane vendor, and the footage that has been used is of a car smashing video taken from the internet. This video was found to be not connected with the incident at all. But the channel, to prove its point, showed a reporter interviewing a Bihari worker who was frightened by the attack. The interview was run alongside the car smashing video, juxtaposed together. The channel did not use a single clip shot by their own reporters or cameramen at the site of the incidents to corroborate their story. Another instance is that of Hindi news channel News 24 broadcasting a story which showed Hindi-speaking people being attacked in Manipur. The story opens with a bashing of a sugarcane vendor, uses the same video as was used by India Today, and quickly morphs into a video of a woman being attacked. This video is of local people agitating on the inner line permit issue in Manipur on July 2015. The woman who the anchor says is being attacked is actually an illiterate widow, a hapless non-Manipuri, but an indigenous citizen of Manipur. Then quickly, the TV story starts showing the same footage of a Assam registration car being attacked. Here too, the channel did not bother to get its own footage shot for use. It all led to political leaders from Bihar making threatening statements against Manipuris, which may inflame enmity between the two communities. PCI Code of Ethics 2010 Norms of Journalistic Conduct in India. Number 1. Accuracy and fairness. The press shall not publish inaccurate, distorted, and half-true information. The journalist must ensure that no conjecture is made based on hearsay or unsubstantiated facts in the reportage. It will ensure that while providing news, all sides of the story will be put out to the public. Number 2. Pre-publication verification. The editor needs to verify the claims or statements made in the report filed by the staff. Quotes and attribution should be made to qualify the information provided in the news item. Number 3. Caution against defamatory writings. The newspaper must follow the tenets of the law of defamation and not engage in any libel or slander against an individual or any organization through its news. Any such news that may be true or in public interest does not fall in the category. Number 4. Parameters of the rights of press to comment on the acts and conduct of public officials. Apart from judiciary, the press can write on the acts of public servants after due verification of the facts. The judiciary, however, is protected by legislations like the Contempt of Court and Protection of the Privileges by Article 105 and 194 respectively. Right to privacy. Right to privacy is a deemed right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. It states, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. Hence, press must refrain from intruding into the personal lives of the public until unless there is a larger objective of public good attached to it. Number 6. Caution against identification. The press will abstain from revealing the identity of the accused and victim while covering the crime. Proper care will be taken to keep the names, faces, and recognizable cues like regional and social identity of people in the story by the newspersons. Number 7. Recording interviews and phone conversations. The journalist will seek permission of the interviewee or the participant to record any conversation as a discussant or interviewer. Phone conversations will also not be recorded without the permission of the concerned person. Number 8. Conjecture, comment, and fact. The distinction between conjecture, comment, and fact must be made while publishing a story. Number 9. Newspapers should avoid suggestive guilt. In matters of crime reportage, the press should not use filial associations to suggest linkage with crime. Number 10. Corrections. It is the duty of the newspaper to publish an apology in case of misinformation and a corrigendum in case there is incorrect information set out as news. Right to reply. The aggrieved person must be able to reply, counter, contradict, or explain his conduct with respect to your published item. Number 12. Letter to the editor. A well-balanced approach is required in selecting the final publication of the letters to the editor. Even though the editor enjoys the discretion regarding the selection of letters, diversity of opinion on a given issue needs to be practiced. Number 13. Obscenity and vulgarity to be eschewed. Newspapers must adhere to the definition of obscenity and not publish anything crass or objectionable about a gender or a segment of population. Number 14. Glorification of social evils to be eschewed. The press needs to ensure that besides crime, social evils like dowry, domestic violence, female feticide untouchability, discrimination, and caste-based inequality must be discouraged by media. Number 15, glorification of criminals. The newspaper must not present a story that may create a favorable image of the perpetrators of crime like rape, murder, and terrorist activities in the minds of the public. Number 16, covering communal disputes and clashes. While covering the outbreak of a communal clash, utmost care must be taken to trim down the emotion and keep the account completely factual and neutral. Number 17, caste, religion, and community references. The Constitution of India and other jurisprudence must be respected in designating a specific social or economic segment of society. Number 18, reporting on natural calamities. Objectivity and comprehensiveness are the key to reporting natural disasters. Cross-verification of facts, minus sensationalism and haste are the key here. 19. Paramount national interest. Media has the responsibility towards nation building and strengthening the democratic state. To do so, the press must adhere to the restrictions on freedom of speech and expression as given in Article 19(2). Number 20. Foreign relations. Press is a principal marker of diplomatic relations between two or more countries. While newspersons must ensure that journalistic writings should not jeopardize the relationship between two nations, it is also the duty of the press to bring to light the anomalies in the code of conduct, especially the misuse of diplomatic immunity. Number 21. Investigative journalism, its norms and parameters. Investigations need to be unhurried, not in disguise, and based on a process of leads, documents, and evidence. Let's now move on to ethics in advertising. Bovey defines advertising as non-personal communication of information usually paid for and usually persuasive in nature about products, services, or ideas by identified sponsors through the various media. In the context of ethics in advertising, ethical advertising means correct use of persuasive messages with respect to peers as well as people. It means ensuring that advertising is free of deception and malice. Deceptive practices in advertising. A number of deceptive practices are prevailing in Indian advertising. Commonly found are: number 1, small print qualifications. Here, the advertisement gives a headline promoting an offer, discount, promotional luring that the audiences come to buy, but complete information is hidden or conditions apply is mentioned in fine print, usually not readable clearly. For example, if the headline says, "Buy one get one free" with an asterisk, underneath at the left corner, text in fine print is written, where the offer is available on limited items only. Number 2, visual distortions. In this, the photographs used are manipulated through softwares like Photoshop, clearly presenting a different visual identity to the product than in reality. Visual distortions are quite common in health and fitness category, where before and after ads skew the body images of the character in the advertisement to communicate the potency of the product. Number 3, bait and switch offers. In this case, the advertisers introduce a tempting price for some specific items, fully aware that the stock is limited, only to create consumer footfall in the retail store, thereby creating opportunities to cross-sell other products than the advertised special price goods. Number 4, palming off. Misrepresentation of inferior goods by creating a striking similarity in product packaging to induce sales. For example, Diamond Chips uses the same color palette for their product packs as the market leader Frito-Lay's. Number 5, false testimonials. Use of celebrities or other famous spokespersons implying that the celebrity is a user of the product being endorsed when in fact the celebrity is not using it. Number 6, false and misleading comparisons. To create an advantage for your brand when the advertisement claims the product, ridicules or put down a rival product by citing selective data or unqualified opinion is quite unethical. Next is false promises. making propositions, that is, promises that are unlikely to be fulfilled. For example, fairness creams make claims of skin whitening in 7 to 14 days, which has failed to hold good on most occasions. Making an advertising promise of restoring youth is another false promise that is hard to keep. Next is partial disclosures. Withholding certain information while stating certain facts about the product in an advertisement is called partial disclosure. Incomplete descriptions that mention the contents or components of a product selectively without giving complete information too fall under this category. Advertising and children. One of the most sensitive areas and areas of grave concern is advertising vis-a-vis children in promotional ethics. In advertising, an attempt is made to make the young audiences as decision makers, perpetually bombarding them with advertisements on various platforms. While discussing the ethics in advertising, a significant question to note is, why is advertising to children unethical? Use of child actors in advertising raises the moral and legal questions on permissibility of child labor in the country. Secondly, use of sexual connotations in ads. Children are exposed to adult stories, humor, and double-meaning advertisements. For example, a child staring at a visual of a semi-clad woman with a pizza slice at one side of a still shot and the tagline reads, "Hungry kya?" illustrates the case in point. Another important aspect of advertising to children is violence, thrill, and adrenaline. Some commercials use scary stunts to promote their concept that may lead the young consumer to imitate the dangerous act shown in the advertisements. For example, a child emulated the bungee jumping act after seeing the Thumbs Up Taste the Thunder commercial recently. Now we move on to another important unethical practice in advertising: circumventing the advertising bans. Surrogate advertising is done to sidestep the bans on advertising of harmful products like tobacco and liquor as per the law. Surrogate advertising means promoting a known liquor or cigarette brand in the garb of a supplementary product under the same label in a covert manner. For example, promoting Bagpiper, which was a liquor brand predominantly, by telecasting TV ads of Bagpiper soda, or by telecasting Royal Star advertising for CDs to circumvent the ban on its alcoholic beverages. Let us now look at the example of Rajnigandha's surrogate advertisement. In this advertisement, a celebrity endorser, movie star Priyanka Chopra, is being used to promote Rajnigandha silver pearls, which is a silver-coated elaichi, knowing fully well that the parent brand, Rajnigandha, is predominantly a producer of pan masala. Now we move on to sex in advertising. Sex in advertising means the intentional use of suggestive or sexual messages in advertisement, sometimes in a hidden manner, to arouse a hedonistic response in the consumers. It is done through selective visuals by embedding sexually explicit words and gestures in an advertisement. For example, the Axe deodorant commercials fall under this category. Let's now closely look at the examples of TV advertisements of deodorants in India. When we look at the TV advertisements of deodorants in India, whether it is Axe commercials or other brands like Engage, we see how the connotative use of sex, subliminal context, as well as hints of sexual intimacy are used to promote the deodorant brands in India. Another grey area vis-a-vis unethical practices in advertising is reinforcing the stereotype. Advertisements end up reinforcing the existing cliches and stereotypes in society, especially with regards to representation of women, with regards to the portrayal and coverage of the third gender, vis-a-vis the sex roles in society, with regards to the portrayal of disabled and elderly in society. It also reinforces the stereotypes vis-a-vis color prejudices and ethnic minorities. Let us look closely at some of the examples of racial profiling, stereotyping of gender in advertising. If you look closely at the left-hand side on the first advertisement, we see how a young girl is talking about slim shape, as if being thin is the only way to be beautiful. In the next advertisement, we see how a man is making fun of three-tied women, reinforcing the position of male and female gender in society. In the advertisement in the middle, we see the Fair and Lovely commercial and print advertisements reinforcing that fair is beautiful, hinting at the color prejudices prevalent in society. In the Old Spice advertisement, again we talk about the difference between roles played by men and women, and how men have different needs than women, even vis-a-vis products which are gender neutral. In the bottom half, we see a Lysol commercial in which a woman is supposed to play the role of cleaner, homemaker, and keeper. All of these examples clearly outline how advertisements are responsible for maintaining the status quo of reinforcing the stereotypes and cliches in society. After journalistic ethics and ethics in advertising, let us now move on to public relations ethics, another subset of media ethics. Grunig and Hunt define public relations as the management of communication between organizations and its publics. It largely deals with goodwill and image communications. Vis-a-vis ethics, the Public Relations Council of India and Public Relations Society of India (PRSI) have formulated guidelines to ensure that PR persons do not indulge in hidden or insidious acts. At the inaugural All India Public Relations Conference in 1968, the Code of Ethics for PR professionals in India was first adopted. Let us now examine the reasons for rise of unethical practices in media. Predominant challenges to ethical media practices come from the three institutions, namely media owners, powerful politicians, and the state. The various reasons for rise in unethical practices are given below. Number 1. Impact of globalization on journalism in India. What started as integration of economies has affected the socio-cultural ethos of Global South, especially India, post-1992. This swift march towards a global village has had defining shifts on the motive, mode, and modus of journalism in the country. Major transformations have taken place in the structure of news due to privatization and deregulation. Shakuntala Rao contends that media globalization has affected the level of professional ideologies, ethical frameworks, and practices of media workers. Number 2. TV news media liberalization in India. The Indian news media saw dismantling of state's monopoly on broadcast news, leading to a television arena made up of many private-owned news media organizations competing with each other. This liberalized media created avenues for interaction between the political and the economic elite and institutions. Number 3. Cultural homogenization. Global media industry has contributed significantly to creation of a homogenized cultural order. Diversity in culture has been subsumed in an all-pervasive global culture of consumerism, not leaving scope for unique and differential value system and beliefs long identified with regions and communities in plural India. The evolution of global media has also diluted the local identity of the East. A unipolar ideology is another outcome of global media industry. It has led to global capitalism in journalism, characterized by concentration of media ownerships, transnational media alliances, and hegemonic practices. Another reason for rise of unethical practices is market-driven journalism. Globalization has resulted in widespread market-driven journalism where maximization of profit is the desired output. To do so, news content is made subservient to the commercial interest of the media house. Critical questions on impact of global capitalism on news are not raised. The new imperialistic powers are given mass coverage to propagate a view or an interest. The nature and scope of news is greatly altered to suit the motives of the global mass media enterprise. Next reason, which is very important with respect to unethical practices, is politico-media nexus. Lot of political parties own media houses or have made large investments in media organizations. Some of the examples are DMK, a principal political party in Tamil Nadu, has invested substantially in the Sun network. Ramoji Rao, the owner of Enaidu Group, which has newspapers, television channels, film production, is seen to be a supporter of the Telugu Desam party in Simandra. In Kerala, the CPIM owns television channels Kairali TV, VTV, People Media, and the Congress party owns Jai Hind. As a result of all this, mainstream media houses support a particular party in lieu of political favors related to channel distribution, allocation of DTH platforms, and political advertising budgets. The media not only report favorably the action and opinion of a particular political party, but also actively contribute in manufacturing consent around it. Leading newspapers and television channels condone the acts of partisanship and even violence committed by political organizations patronizing them. Let's now move on to another important reason of unethical practices: emergence of media monopolies. There is now a trend of media monopolies formed due to vertical and horizontal media integrations and consolidation of market share in a given geographical area. Cross-media ownership means owning media across print and electronic media, whereas vertical integration means integration within a particular media segment. Cross-media ownership is especially detrimental to free press as it curbs editorial diversity and plurality. It leads to similarity in content and distribution, unmindful of unique needs of various segments of audiences in the society. Another important reason is state interference. Freedom of media is often curbed by various controlling mechanisms of the state. State serves its own interest by applying restrictions on media coverage from time to time. Various books, articles, films are banned, contravening the notions of free press in a democracy. State, in the name of national security, may stop the publication or broadcast of a vital story that needs to be told to the people of the country. Recently, release of a documentary, India's Daughter, was banned, citing defamation of India by the state. Next reason is weak self-regulatory mechanism. Even though self-regulatory bodies exist in Indian media, they are not able to curb the rise in unethical practices with much success. Often, media professionals are not willing to identify and take a firm stand against the one that indulges in such practices. Secondly, it is merely capable of making recommendations without much punitive powers to evoke a sense of fear and control on the violations by newspersons and advertisers alike. Another important reason for rise in unethical practices is lack of proper media training. Media as a profession grew in an asymmetrical manner. It still does not have a systematic process of eligibility and educational criteria at the entry level. Aspirants from various disciplines join the profession not necessarily understanding the fundamentals of media practice. As opposed to other professions, media recruitment rules are vague, ambiguous, and generic, leading to widening gap between what should be and what is. Therefore, many media persons are not aware of the code of conduct or about the legal and self-regulatory frameworks. Additionally, they have not been trained to value and practice ethics above everything else. So students, let us now summarize what we've learned in this module. Today we have learned that the overreaching universe of media ethics across professional codes is used to promote truth, fairness, and freedom from bias. Importantly, every nation must revisit the global ethical norms to address the problems of inequality, the problems of preserving human dignity, no harm to the innocent, and the empowerment of those on the margins. Thank you.